Scrum is a software development model that builds software in small increments called sprints. So Scrum is an iterative, incremental development models that develop software in small or in increments called sprints. So meaning that at every sprint, we define our requirements, we design, we develop, we test, and we'll add that to our code base. Does that make sense? Okay, what are the things that what constitute a software development lifecycle? SDLC. What is a software development lifecycle? What are the activities? Because it's like what's it called? It's a life cycle, meaning there are different stages. So what are the stages? One, we have requirements gathering, right?
Design.
Okay. 2, design. 3, development.
Oh.
Don't forget, this will control. This is like what guides your discipline. If you say you're a software tester, that means you're working in a software development lifecycle. Testing cannot be done in isolation. Meaning it's done in a development mode. Like that means there must be a development. There must be something going on before testing can come and test. So what happens in that what activity that happens is called the software development lifecycle. Meaning what are the things that would happen before, and where does testing fit into the development of software? So in any software project, or there's a life cycle. The first thing is requirement gathering. The second thing is design. Third thing is development. Then fourth is testing.
And then reports or maintenance.
Yeah. Then fourth is like
Fourth or fifth.
1, 2, 3 requirements. 1, design. 2, development. 3, testing. 4.
And
Then you can have maintenance. Production or whatever. Yes. Those are like your software development lifecycle. Don't forget. Meaning, we've been talking about things that happen in a software project, right? We know requirements will always be there. We know testing is there. We know development is there. We know design is there. So, how the life cycle is what we're talking about. What are the different things that happens?
And that's definitely always sequential.
Yes.
Always.
All this happens in any software development project. There must be requirement gathering phase. There must be the design phase. There must be.
Are you saying requirement doesn't have to be first? And depending on what project you're working on.
It doesn't have to be first, but it must be there.
Okay.
You cannot effectively develop a software if you don't have requirements. You must know what the business wants. You must know what the system is supposed to do. You must know the technicalities of the software application. Do you understand? So in any software development lifecycle, you must have things like this. And we saw how the model is just basically telling you how we want to arrange all this stuff. Do we put testing first or testing last? Do you understand? This thing must be there. The development lifecycle, the software development lifecycle tells you what must happen. Then your methodology tells you how it should happen. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Trust me, you're making that sense.
I don't know, but you know. Anything that I don't understand, let me know. So a software development lifecycle tells you what are the things, the stages of things that should be done. It's a life cycle. The same way you have a product life cycle, you have initiation, we have growth, we have maturity and decline, right? And all this is in stages. The same way you have a software development. Notice development, not software test like that. Software meaning that testing only comes in because there is a software development. But there's a life cycle. So you might be a software tester, but you work in a software development environment. You work with people that are developing software, work with people that their job is to develop software. You're not just there to test in isolation. Do you understand? So because of that, because there's a life cycle to software development, which is requirements gathering, design, development, testing, and maintenance. Now we know what the software development lifecycle is. Now we're not asking how do we arrange these different stages. What should be first, what should be last? So waterfall said, the way we are seeing it, that's the way it should be. We should start with requirements. After requirements, we should go to design, right? After design, we should go to development. After development, we should go to testing. After testing, we should go to maintenance. It's a waterfall approach. It's called the methodology. Don't forget, they will never ask you what is, they will not just ask you what is waterfall. They'll ask you what methodology have you used. Meaning, what style did you guys use in developing that software? But don't forget, software development has a life cycle. So as long as you're talking about development, you start with the life cycle and you start the methodology. Life cycle is what must be there, the stages. The methodology is how do you arrange this thing? Do we start with? So waterfall is a sequential approach. Never forget. He said everything should be done sequentially, but there's a short form. Short form meaning every stage is independent, like of the next stage. Meaning we must have requirements. Requirement must be defined, approved before we start design. Design must be started and completed before we start development. It's sequential. If you say, okay, requirement must be done in 2 weeks, and when in 2 weeks time it must be done, and we'll have to move to design. Everything is in the block on its own. Make sense? So if you say, oh, design, so now you are actually estimating this project based on how long each phase would take. Okay, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. But the problem with this is testing is starting almost at the last phase. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Meaning, then they don't allow you to test requirements. Yeah. They don't allow you to spend enough time starting your testing from there. They say, no. Only when you get to, when we are ready for you, we'll call you. See the shortcut of waterfall.
Yeah.
Everything is defined. So vModel tries to solve that problem in a way by saying, for every documentation we should have a corresponding test. Right? When you're gathering your requirements, the outcome of it is documentation. BRD, FRD, TSD, all those things. So testing is saying, we don't want to wait to the end. Why don't we start testing from when you're gathering requirement? Okay, let's break down the requirement gathering. So if we have our BRD right here, BRD, we want to have a type of test to go with it, which is UAT. Right? vModel. If we're talking about our functional specification document, functional requirement document, we want to have a test to go with it, which is system test or functional test, right? System test and functional test are the same thing. If we want to have a TSD documentation, then we should have an integration test to go with it. Integration. Then at this point we have our code. This part of the system is called validation. You validate the requirement. This side is verification, right? That's the vModel. Exactly. Yeah. So that's vModel. So rather than testing, if you still look, it still has that waterfall breaking down, right? It still has that waterfall, but now we're moving testing from the bottom and we're moving it on the side of the requirements. But also notice that each of these is also a phase too. It's actually a phase. So we have UAT testing. We have 4 types of testing or 4 levels of testing. I said that right? Remember? So these are the levels: code, component testing, integration testing, system testing, UAT testing. So you can see that the levels of testing goes with the documentation that you have. Right? This is just to refresh your memory. Okay, so, but there's still a problem with this because it's still like a variation of waterfall where documentation is is what defined from the beginning of the project. Once documentation is defined, it is defined. Once they sign up and approve a document, any changes will go to a change request, regardless of if it's waterfall or vModel, because vModel is an offshoot of waterfall. So there's still the problem of how do we account for changes in requirements? What if we decide that, okay, we want to make changes, something has changed, customer demands has changed. We talk about quality. What is quality?
Determined by the customer.
Exactly. Yep. So quality is determined by the customer. So now we want to develop a quality software. We want software to do what customer wants to do. What if customer comes in 6 months down the line and so we want to add a feature where someone can do 1 or 2 things? You say, oh, this requirement is already fixed. You can't do anything. We have to now wait. By the time you now get to maintenance, remember we talked about maintenance, or when we get to production, customer needs has changed. So we are releasing the software, but we don't have a customer. We don't have people that want to use software because their taste, their need, what they want has changed. But we do capture for those changes in our requirements. You see the problem with waterfall vModel? It doesn't account for changes in requirement based on what the customer wants. And we're talking about
in real time.
Yes, that's what. So the solution to this is Scrum methodology. So Scrum came in and said, why do we have to wait for 1 year before we deliver a software? Why don't we do it in bits, so that if we're doing it in bits, if customers say they want software, we can quickly add it in the next sprint. So rather than wait, okay, you do requirement in 6 months, you do design in 10 months, you do development in 20 months. Why don't we just do everything in a short iteration, in a short period called sprint? So Scrum is a software development methodology that takes into account changes in requirements. I hope that makes sense. So that's why I have to go back and explain the shortcoming of waterfall, the shortcoming of vModel, and what Scrum hopes to achieve. So Scrum is saying, no, why should we wait? We'll still do everything. We'll still do requirement gathering. We'll still do design, development, testing. But rather than do it in so long period, why don't we do it in short phases, in short iterations, in short cycle called sprint? So in Scrum, we have what we call sprint. Sprint, I will explain it to you, but sprint is basically a time box period where you do all the stuff you do in a software development life cycle. Understood? So in sprint, you still do your design, your requirements. There's still requirement gathering. There's still design. There's still development. There's still testing, and maintenance. But all this thing is done in sprints, and those sprints could be 3 weeks to a month. 3 weeks to 1 month. Industry standard is 1 month. You see what I'm saying? So, meaning, technically, each person has a week to do what they have to do. If you are designing, design enough for 1 week. If you are gathering requirements, don't try to get everything. Just get enough for 1 week. So if someone says, oh, something should be done, we say, don't worry, we'll do it in next sprint. You see what I'm trying to say? We won't say, oh, there's a change request, everything has to be locked. No. So it makes it shorter, it gives a shorter development period so that we can capture change in requirements. That makes sense? Yeah. So now, if you are doing every sprint, so sprint is a time box period where we still have to do all our development work, but in a shorter time period. It's time boxed. 3 weeks to a month. Meaning, so requirements can be done in 1 week, design can be done in 1 week, testing can be done in 1 week, and after that, we finish that sprint, we go to the next sprint.
So it's pretty much for a week per...
Yes, technically. So we're only taking enough. How do we know what we need, or where are we taking it from? Where are we taking what we need to do? Or if someone say, okay, we need to add login page, where do we keep that information to know what to do with the next sprint? Right?
Yeah.
There must be somewhere we're keeping it. If not, we'll say, no, don't stress me. Let me just finish everything. I don't want to miss anything. How can you be sure that next sprint will know to do these things? There's what they call product backlog.
Product
Backlog. Now, when you guys go home, you can check YouTube for all this things. But explaining it to help you guys, I'm just breaking everything, guys. When you go home and just do Scrum training, you can give like a short 10-minute video. So product backlog. What is a product backlog? Product backlog is basically a repository for all the requirements that would be added in the project. All the tasks, everything that needs to be done in the project is housed in the product backlog. Everything. If it's not in the backlog, it doesn't get done. So any requirement, anything that has to be done or added to the software project must be added to the product backlog. That has to be done is product backlog. It's not there, it doesn't get done. So if customers say, oh, we want this functionality, we tell them put it in the backlog.
So who puts it in the backlog?
Good questions. We'll talk about rules. Well, I'm just giving you what the different things that are involved in Scrum. The different terminologies, the different things I'll be hearing in Scrum. So everything goes in the backlog. Who puts stuff in the backlog? Everyone can do it. Anyone can do it. If you as a tester, you decide that, oh, I think we should add this thing, put it in the backlog. No problem. But there's someone responsible for managing the backlog. It's called the product owner. Product backlog, product owner. Who manages the product backlog? The product owner. What's the job of a product owner? Product owner manages the backlog, pretty much. He prioritizes. You know, we talk about everything has to go in a sprint, right? How do we decide what should go in this sprint, this sprint, this sprint? That's the job of the product owner. He prioritizes the backlog. So he says, okay, based on I'm representing the business, login is more important than updating your profile. So login must go into sprint 2. So backlog is just a list. Backlog is a list of requirements. That's what backlog is. But the product owner can reprioritize. So this can be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. The product owner can put number 4 to number 1 for next sprint. He can reprioritize the backlog, rearrange the backlog, change things around, and even break down the requirements. Because sometimes requirement can be so big, it might not fit into a sprint. So he needs to break it down. So he reprioritizes and he breaks down requirements into smaller chunks. Remember I said software development lifecycle must have requirement, design, development, test. Those 4 things are very important. Doesn't matter what methodology you use, those things are still very present. But now instead of a business analyst, now you can see that business analyst in a way is being replaced by everyone. You can come up with requirements, I can come up with requirements, product owner can come up with requirements, anyone can come up with requirements. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So in a Scrum methodology, you will never hear the word business analyst. You'll be hearing things like product owner. Because product owner, they speak to the customer directly. They talk to the customer as the business. So they are responsible for what goes into the product. They are responsible for what goes into the software.
What gets prioritized? Right?
Yes. They are the ones that tell you guys what you should be working on based on what the customer wants. You see how Scrum is very effective? Because it makes sure that every point in time we are getting what customer want and we are giving it to them. You understand that? So the interface, they are always interfacing with the customers. Always interfacing with the customers. Always. So if it's not done in this sprint, we'll put it in the next sprint. If it's not done in the next sprint, we'll just leave it in, the backlog. If it's in the backlog, it gets done. If it's not in the backlog, it doesn't get done. But most of the time, not everything in the backlog gets done. But if it's not there, we're not doing it.
Definitely, yeah.
So there is no completion date like waterfall. Oh, the project must know, because I will get to that. Because after every sprint, you have real life functioning software that you can release to the public. Yes, that's why you see Facebook doing updates every time.
So they definitely Scrum.
Yes, most people use Scrum because Scrum is more responsive to change. So if you do something and customer doesn't want, you can quickly take it off and bring another update. You don't wait. It's never ending. It's never ending. Not updating, but it takes into account customer needs in real time. Like, do you understand?
Yeah, that's what
Yes. At least if you do everything in short, like iterations, you can easily capture customer needs better than when you do it in the longer, like 1 year. Customer can tell you want something general, because customer needs changes, requirement changes. Do you understand that? So you see why everybody's crazy about Scrum, because these days things are changing faster than you can imagine. So you see what Scrum is trying to do? Scrum is just a solution to the changing customer requirements. Let me put it that way.
So why don't all businesses run Scrum?
Good question. Scrum is not easy to run. We're coming to that. It's the hardest methodology to run. People can talk about it. If you go for interview, they'll tell you we do Scrum. By the time you start working, we find out they leave it mostly waterfall and just the Scrum ceremonies. We are coming to that. You still see requirement. Like for instance, we still are running in my company. We're doing both Scrum and waterfall, both Scrum and V model. But the only Scrum thing we're doing is just our ceremonies of like daily stand-up, 1 month sprints. But we still have our documentation like it's V model.
I can already understand why Scrum would be difficult.
Why?
Because it's constantly. Like, don't even one or another one's popping up like.
Everybody's working.
I think it's just more tedious.
Because it's like, okay, for instance, if you are doing waterfall, BA are gathering requirement, nobody's talking to BA. Just go and do your thing. But in Scrum, the team, everybody is working together in one shot. Meaning you are doing your own, you're asking me a question, I'm doing my own. We're all having daily meetings. we have to be in constant communication because we have a short time there's no time for you to go and do one day and come back and no. Everyone is working in a short time box. So it's harder to manage because you have to manage the team's interaction. Everybody would make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We'll come to that. Okay, for instance, product owner is constantly prioritizing backlog. So he's doing that so that he will not disturb us, the team, the guys that are working. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So when he's ready, he's constantly prioritizing backlog. Then the Scrum Master will now say, okay, we'll come to that. What's the job of the Scrum Master? The Scrum Master is someone that takes on the backlog. We haven't gotten the data. In Scrum, there are the roles, the work to be done, and the ceremonies.
Wait, repeat it again.
We will come to that. In Scrum.
No, I'm saying Scrum Master.
Scrum Master is someone that plans a sprint.
Okay.
So he interfaces with the team to take requirements from the backlog to plan a sprint. So the job of the Scrum Master is to go to the backlog and say, okay, we already know what we want to do. But the Scrum Master is like guiding us, okay, let's take 50 items on the backlog and plan our sprint.
That's like product owner, no?
Product owner tells you what to be done. The Scrum Master tells you what should be done in the sprint. the product owner, yes, the Scrum Master has already prioritized 20 items. But don't forget, we only have 1 week, 1 month, right? How do we know what's enough to be done in 1 month?
Oh, that's Scrum.
Yeah, the Scrum Master is like, he's the lead. He's not the leader of the team. Let me not give the wrong guys the wrong, because people think the Scrum Master is like their manager. No, he just processes the team to make sure everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So he shields the team.
So then like Shepherd.
Yes, exactly. So he will be the one to tell the product, no, this is what my team can do for this sprint. Don't stress us, because there's not in a Scrum project, there's not really clearly defined roles. Do you understand? We just have Scrum Master, product owner, and the team. The team involves developers, testers, all these different people, but just call them the team. Meaning, in a Scrum, sometimes they expect a tester to be able to write code, a developer to be able to test. Yeah, everyone should be able to. That is the team. That's why it's called Scrum. It's taken from the word rugby, where the whole team, you know how the whole team moves in. Yeah, that's where Scrum came from. So the team is moving in unison as a whole team. Yeah, as one. That's where Scrum came from. So they say that this is a better way to develop software rather than the waterfall V model. So we have the product owner. Product owner basically decides what goes into a sprint. And how would he know? There's what they call what's it called? Well, there's what they call backlog grooming. Backlog grooming. Grooming. When you're grooming the backlog, meaning exactly. Yeah. That's what the product owner does. Yep, and prioritizing it. So basically, after the backlog grooming, the team also gets involved in backlog grooming. Don't forget, it's being managed by the product product owner, but the team gets involved in backlog grooming too. So for when the backlog grooming is done, now the Scrum Master says, okay, let's go and take from the backlog and plan our sprint. So there's what they call sprint planning. All these things are things to be done. They're actual activities to be done. Backlog grooming is an activity where the team comes together to decide how to prioritize and re-strategize work in the backlog.
My question is this. Obviously, apps have to be like, they have to be updated or updated because of the public. But I feel like other software, as far as professional software, don't get as much.
That's why you, in any software environment, one of the things to be done during planning is what methodology to use. That's a good question. It's not every time Scrum works.
It's necessary.
People are so. It's a buzzword. Everybody wants to jump into it, but it doesn't work for every project.
Exactly.
People don't know.
So I guess that also answers why not every company works.
Yes, but for the most part, these days, most software will get updated. Most software will get continuously being updated. If not, you lose customers. If not, you go out. You know, I told you that customer needs changes. They're always wanting. So regardless how powerful your software is, you will always have some form of changes or update done to it. Windows to today.
There's a Windows
Name one. Not rapid changes, but they will still need some changes to be done. Yeah, and in Scrum you can plan your release too. So Scrum is not always, even if you release something in 2 weeks, you don't have to release it to the public. But it's there. You have added it to your code base. You have added it to what it's called. Okay, Scrum is maybe I should give you it's a developmental like methodology that works in as a process of developing software in short iterations. That software is a potentially shippable product. Meaning, if you want to release it, it's good enough to be released, but not everything should be released. I mean, potentially shippable meaning after the sprint, you're ready to go live. See what I'm saying? Because you've done. Okay, look at this. if requirement is taking 6 months, have you written any code?
No.
Can you ship anything there?
No.
So meaning you can wait till 1 year before you start writing, before you start development. See all the time you've wasted? You've not written 1 line of code. And 6-7 months don't go. But what Scrum is saying is let's do everything in one sprint. So after the sprint, you have a potentially shippable product. Meaning you have an actual functionality, an actual product that works. Not just requirements, not just design, not just development. But there's requirement, it has been developed and tested in just 1 month. That's why it's called incremental, because after every sprint, we are adding to our code base. We are adding to our code base. It's increasing. It's incrementing. Do you understand? That our increment can be released if we want it to be released. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
No, I do. Trust me.
Okay. Awesome. So we've talked about what? We've talked about backlog grooming, where you prioritize and break down, those things in the backlog are called user stories. Did I tell you that? So those requirements in the backlog, in the backlog is a repository for requirement. But those requirements, because they are so short, they are called user stories. User stories.
So
they are requirements, short requirements, but they are called user stories. Or stories, whichever one. Because they are written in story form. You saw when we were looking at that BRD yesterday, as a manager, I want to be able to do this, so I can do this. That's why it's called user story. Because you're writing it from the perspective of the user, but in the form of a story. As a user, I want to be able to log in to Facebook so that I can see my profile. So that, so that I can see my profile. That's why I want to log in.
I'm saying, why did you write it in story form?
Yeah, so that you can understand, so that it's easy for everyone to understand. Yes. Yes. It's easy for non-technical people to understand what you're trying to do. There's nothing technical about it. You just leave it in the story form. Developers will understand it, business people understand it, testers will understand it, customers will understand it, and users themselves that want to understand it. As a user, I want to be able to log into Facebook so that I can update my profile. So it's written in 3 lines. As a I want so that, or so as to. That's how user story is written. Make sense? I say this one is your role, the role goes there. Then this one talks about the function, the actual function, and this talks about the benefit or the value. Don't forget, customer quality is defined by customer, right? So the value must always grow. As a, what do you want to do? As a what? User, as an admin, as a anything that you think whoever is going to be using the software, you're writing that user story from their point of view. You saw what we saw yesterday, retail POS. Who uses retail POS system? Shop agents. So as a shop agent, I want to be able to see what we have in our warehouse so that I can replenish our goods and services when it's low. Do you understand something like that? So you're writing from the point of view of the actual user of that function. Or working on insurance software, we'll say something like, as an agent, as an adjuster, I want to be able to see policy numbers so that I can That's pretty much what it is. So it's written, user story is written like this. So that's how the product owner usually writes user stories that's in the backlog.
I want to be able to change my profile.
Exactly.
So that I can update my face stuff.
See,
As a Facebook user, I want to be able to block DD or Facebook.
that's pretty much what it is. You see, you guys always think like in Scrum. This is what happens in Scrum methodology. They will ask you, do you know how to write user story? They will ask you that question. Don't think it's a joke. They'll ask you, have you written a user story before? Tell them yes. They will not ask you, how do you write a user story? Don't forget what I just explained to you. As a, I want to, so that ask you why. Say, ask A, they identify the role. The ask A is to capture the role. I want to is to know the function of what you want to do. Then they also ask us to define the benefit. Or yeah. So the role, the function, and the benefit. All these things you can always check them online. So we've defined what the backlog, who's responsible for the backlog, right? And what kind of information is in the backlog. And we'll also talk about backlog grooming. So all these things like backlog grooming, sprint plan, they're called ceremonies. They're the activities you do. They're called ceremonies. We have we'll talk about all the ceremonies, but now we're talking about what Scrum is. We're defining the roles now. So I might be going back and forth, but at the end of the day, we'll know what are the ceremonies. We'll know what are the roles, and we'll know who does what. Ceremonies, yeah, pretty much. So Scrum, we've talked about Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is responsible for planning the sprint. Right? Sprint plan is also a ceremony. And we'll have